Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today is our feature for the month of October, and we're talking about World Food Day in today's program, and we're asking the question, what would it take to end hunger? Of course, as you know, there are people in the world who don't get enough food to eat every day, and of course, we want to solve this problem, but what do we need to do to solve this problem?
We need to have governments around the world that aren't so corrupt. We have plenty of food, but we just can't get it to the people because we've still got folks out there that are a little selfish, let's say, and keeping more for themselves than they should. But we're going to be talking about how this World Food Day helps us kind of focus on that and see if there's anything we're the little people out there, can do to help folks get the food they need. I was just listening to some news yesterday, and even in London, they said that in a pretty wealthy neighborhood, there were people lined up at the soup kitchen to get food.
My goodness.
We're going to see more food shortages, unfortunately. But what would it take to end hunger? I think one of the saddest pictures that you can see out there are little kids, and they're starving. And when they're starving, their little tummies kind of get swollen. They look like they're kind of fat, but that's because they don't have enough food in them, and their tummies swell up. So, yeah, hopefully one day we can get this particular problem solved. It makes me sad.
And, of course, that's one of the reasons why World Food Day was established way back in 1945.
Yeah, a long time ago.
So, yeah, it seems kind of weird that we still have these problems with us. So let's find out what World Food Day is all about. Let's go through the lesson for today by reading it word by word from top to bottom.
We've all felt hunger pangs when our bodies tell us to give them the vital nutrients they require. Fortunately, most of us have the resources necessary to squash hunger pangs. But what about those who don't? That's where the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, comes in. Established on October 16, 1945, the FAO plays an influential role in raising awareness of global poverty and hunger issues. As part of its awareness campaign, the FAO has hosted World Food Day annually since 1979. Despite what its name might suggest, World Food Day isn't about highlighting the world's most interesting or tasty cuisines. Its purpose is to draw attention to the collective action taking place across the globe to stop hunger. For instance, Mongolia organizes its Food Security Conference on World Food Day. The conference highlights the country's biggest food security issues and the research being done to address them. It also recognizes the contributions of Mongolia's top researchers for their valuable work in developing sustainable food practices. Every year, World Food Day organizers declare a theme. Like 2016's, Climate is changing. Food and agriculture must too. Events that year focused on how the changing climate and the ensuing natural disasters had ruined crops, while also looking at proposed solutions for more sustainable agricultural systems. Another theme, 2019's Healthy Diets for a Zero Hunger World, engaged in conversations about poverty. Not only are millions of people going hungry, but millions more are facing growing health complications because they can only afford unhealthy foods. Solutions in this theme center around providing nutritious food to everyone. Whatever the theme, the target stays the same: ending world hunger for good.
Okay, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. Of course, the title is What It Would Take to End Hunger. We're going to have some suggestions in our article to try to stop hunger from happening all over the world. And we begin by saying, we've all felt hunger pangs when our bodies tell us to give them the vital nutrients they require. Indeed, this does happen quite often I've noticed people seem to get really, really hungry at about 11 or 11:30 in the morning when they've been working really hard. Oh, I'm so hungry. So when you have hunger pangs, that means you're kind of feeling a little bit of pain in your stomach, perhaps, because you are so hungry.
Or we'll say our stomach is growling. You'll hear that rumbling sound. Sometimes people's stomach will rumble after they eat while they're trying to digest their food, but it will also rumble or growl when you're really hungry. And you may have heard some foreigners say, oh, I have hunger pains. And it's just a really sharp pain. It could be a painful emotion that you're feeling. A sharp pang of guilt, or a sharp pang of sadness. It's just a really sudden feeling that comes over you. Well, these are hunger pangs, and they happen. Sometimes they can happen mid-afternoon, too. Or for me, it's usually around 4:30. I'm like, I'm starving to death. Well, those kind of hunger pangs tell you that your body is either looking for some food or, as I've also been told by experts, it wants some water. So drink some water, and maybe you can save some calories that way instead of going and get a candy bar or some snacks. So fortunately, most of us have the resources or money necessary to squash hunger pangs. To squash usually means to press something really flat to the surface, but it also can just mean to quiet something down or to stop something, to silence something. Maybe there are some riots going on in the neighborhood, and the police are sent in to squash the riots or squash the protests.
Exactly, to get rid of them, basically. So, yeah, we live in a nice, wealthy country where food distribution isn't such a problem. So if we get hungry, well, we can take care of those hunger pangs by having lunch, eating a paigufan or whatever, and that will do the trick. But what about those who don't? What about those people who don't have the resources to squash those hunger pangs? People in third world countries who have food distribution problems, or people who are living in areas with drought and floods and things like that. Well, that's where the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO for short, comes in. Notice this sentence has this kind of structure. That's where someone comes in. That's where something comes in. That means if you have a problem, then someone will say, oh, well, that's where you come in. That's why we hired you, because you can take care of our product development.
Yeah, that's where you come in. This is your part of our plan, or you're somebody that's going to be an important part in solving some sort of issue. That's where you come in. This is where you come in. That's a great phrase to learn. We use it a lot, actually. Your contribution will be important. So we've got the UN, and they've got this organization that is shortened to FAO.
Established on October 16th, 1945, the FAO plays an influential role in raising awareness of global poverty and hunger issues. So this particular branch of the UN came to be. It was established. It was set up in 1945 on October 16th. Remember, if you're talking about a date, you say on October 16th in 1945. And if something's influential, that means it has influence. Whatever it does or says causes a reaction in society. So, of course, this group is influential. It has made contributions to stopping world hunger.
Yeah, so you can be influential with the people in your life, maybe your family, your friends. You have the power to change their opinion. Maybe you want to influence someone to change their opinion or to do something you want them to do. It's nice to be influential. People who are influential in the world usually have more power. They've attained some sort of significance in the world. Well, they have an influential role or an important role in raising awareness about global poverty, people who are quite poor, and hunger issues. As part of this awareness campaign, the FAO has hosted World Food Day annually or every year since 1979. Moving on to paragraph 2, it says, despite what its name might suggest, World Food Day isn't about highlighting the world's most interesting or tasty cuisines. We've often done that here at English Digest. We've introduced some really cool cuisines around the world. That's not what we're doing, though, today.
Yeah, it might be more interesting that way. You could have famous chefs appear on their programs like Jamie Oliver or Gordon Ramsay or Aji Shi. They could all appear and introduce new dishes and how to cook them and stuff. But yeah, that name kind of suggests that it might be such a day, but that's not what it's all about. Its purpose is to draw attention to the collective action taking place across the globe to stop hunger. And if something's collective, that means people are all working together. So yes, we've got people working on all the different continents and in different countries to try to end world hunger. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们常常每年都会在学校举办一些所谓的饥荒的体验，饥饿30，大家都有听过吧？当然我们大家都有经过饥饿的痛苦，可是为什么会有饥饿呢？然后为什么粮食都会这样子浪费呢？我们今天就要带大家来看一下世界粮食日。可是这个世界粮食日并不是要介绍什么粮食美食啦，主要是要带大家希望能够结束 to end hunger， 结束饥荒这件事情。好，那我们刚刚说在饥饿30的体验，或者是平常有时候因为少吃了，或者是延迟了吃饭的时间，都会感受这种饥饿的痛苦。在第一段第一句的地方，可以注意 pang 这个字 P-A-N-G， 它出现在第一段第一句逗点前面哦。这个 pang 就是所谓的剧痛或者是煎熬的意思。不过在这里有带了一个 hunger pang， 就是很饿的这种痛苦。好，不过这句还要看一下，因为它其实有一个补充说明的关系子句，逗点之后的 when 一直到句尾，可以左右括号起来。这里的 when 呢，指的是而在那个时候，哪个时候呢？就是觉得很饿的那个 pain 剧痛煎熬的那个时候，身体就是告诉我们要吃东西啦，需要重要的营养啦。好，那大家都会希望呢，不要能够挨饿，所以到底要怎么样做呢？这个联合国粮食还有农业组织，也就是我们今天看到的 FAO， 它就开始呢来做一些事情了。那它是成立在1945年的10月16号，是希望能够提高大家对于全球贫困还有饥饿议题的这一种重视。我们来看一下第一段，在第5句的地方有一个分词构句哦。当我们在介绍 FAO 这个组织的时候，其实这是2句话简化成1句。原本的句子应该是有主词，也就是逗点之后的 the FAO。 句子原本应该是 The FAO was established on October 16, 1945。 逗点之后应该还有一个连接词的 and， 而这个组织扮演什么样的角色？那因为其实都是用来形容组织嘛，所以我们把连接词删掉，把同样的主词也就删掉，剩下就是一个被建立在什么什么时候，所以它其实是一个分词构句 and 连接词省略的分词构句。所以我们刚刚说这个 FAO 这个世界粮食日所举办的这样子的一个活动呢，当然我们会觉得好像是要介绍什么粮食，没有，其实就是希望大家能够一起来终止饥饿。我们来看一下第2段第2句的地方，第2句 its purpose 这一句有一个关系子句的简化哦，先行词是 the collective action， 这样子一个集体的关注的行动，后面的 taking一直到句尾可以左右括号。 taking 原本应该是 which 或者是 that takes T-A-K-E-X， 它是关系子句的简化，而且是限定用法哦。限定什么呢？全世界各国为了要终止饥饿采取的这些 collective action。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's our feature unit, and we're talking about what it would take to end hunger. What would we have to do to finally end world hunger? We've given billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to this problem, but our leaders still have not made any progress. So we've got to wonder if we're just kind of throwing our money away. Maybe people can get together and take care of hunger in their own communities. We know that some of these countries, though, that are very poor need help from other countries. So we got to figure out how to get that money to the people who will actually help those who are very poor and also starving to death in certain areas of the world. So we talked about how this group had been set up, United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. It was established long ago, 1945, and they came up with this awareness campaign that is now called World Food Day, and they host it annually, and every year they have a different theme.
Indeed. And yes, indeed, World Food Day is not about how to cook food. It's all about getting food distributed around the world to people who need it. And it is a collective action. People are cooperating to stop hunger. So, for instance, or for example, Mongolia organizes its food security conference on World Food Day. So this is what Mongolia is doing. That's the country north of China there, Mongolia. And this is what they do. They organize a food security conference. A conference, of course, is when people get together to discuss things, and they gather experts from all parts of the world, and they get together, they have activities, and try to come up with some solutions to solve this particular problem.
Yeah, if you work in business, you've probably been sent out by your boss to attend a conference. It's kind of fun to get away from the office. And usually you're staying at a pretty nice hotel and listening to experts in your field speak for a couple of days, and then you go back. So they have something they call the Food Security Conference. So the conference highlights or points out the country's biggest food security issues and the research being done to address them. So if you address something, it means you talk about that particular topic, and that's what they get together to do. It also recognizes the contributions of Mongolia's top researchers. Their top researchers are busy doing work on developing sustainable food practices, how they can keep that food coming so that their people are not starving to death. So if you make a contribution to something, you might give of your time, or maybe you're giving of your money, but you're doing something to help a particular cause. So you're playing a part by either donating some money, some food, your time. You're making a contribution to improve things. Notice here that we're saying contribution, not contribution, which is a different pronunciation that you'll hear sometimes by British speakers. So contribution. What are you going to contribute is the verb form. What are you going to contribute? Where the heavy syllable is the tr, contribute, and then for contribution, it's contribution.
Right. The American pronunciation of the verb form is contribute. I think in England they say contribute oftentimes as the verb form. But yes, Mongolia's conference there is recognizing the contributions of Mongolia and the top researchers there for their valuable work in developing sustainable food practices. If something's sustainable, it can continue. So, of course, you want to have these practices, these policies that can work over and over again, and they don't need to be revised or they don't disappear in the future. And so everybody can continue to have 3 square meals a day. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, every year, World Food Day organizers declare a theme. Like 2016's Climate is Changing, Food and Agriculture Must Too. So, yes, indeed, these branches of the UN try to get people to notice what they're doing and to be aware of this problem. So they have a theme or an idea, and of course they publish it and they, post on Facebook and stuff like that, I suppose, and have news stories so people are aware of this. And we have an example here of one of their themes. Climate is changing, changing food and agriculture must too. So that's kind of a catchy phrase. And when people hear that, they'll think, yeah, I guess we do need to do something about world hunger.
So events that year, and we're talking about 2016, they focused on how the changing climate and the ensuing natural disasters had ruined crops. Ensuing means something that follows another event. So you had the changing climate, and after that, the results or the consequences that followed were that we had natural disasters ruining crops of food that were going to waste. They couldn't be harvested and then distributed to people in need. A disaster is when something bad happens. It could be natural, it could be man-made, but it's usually a sudden event. Could be an accident or something like a typhoon or an earthquake. Those are disasters. Maybe there's a big fire in your city. That's a disaster, but it causes a lot of damage. And typically, when you have really big natural disasters, it causes the loss of life too.
So we've got changing climate, and then we have the resulting disasters, which ruin crops, either from floods or from drought and things like that. And of course, they're looking for proposed solutions for more sustainable agricultural systems so that they can withstand these disasters as they become more frequent in the future. And another theme, 2019's Healthy Diets for a Zero Hunger World, engaged in conversations about poverty. So again, we've got different themes from this World Food Day. And in 2016, it was Climate is Changing, Food and Agriculture Must Too. And in 2019, their theme was Healthy Diets for a Zero Hunger World. So that's important because a lot of us do get a lot to eat, but sometimes the food isn't particularly healthy, like we eat too much junk food and too many carbohydrates, for example.
True. So they were focusing on healthy diets. So not only are millions of people going hungry, millions more are facing growing health complications because they can only afford unhealthy foods. You've probably noticed it's a lot cheaper to buy fast food than to go to a grocery store and buy all this healthy stuff and go home and cook. So, yeah, we're trying to make some of the healthy things that will give us the nutrients we need available to people, especially in urban areas. That was a big problem in big cities, especially in New York City. I know it was harder to get really healthy foods that were affordable, that were not so expensive.
Right, and here, of course, we've got the word complications. You may have heard the adjective complicated. Gee, I want to get my motorcycle fixed, but the repair guy just didn't want to do it because it was just too complicated. It would take too long, so I guess I just had to get rid of the motorcycle. But here, the noun form is complication. These are things that make something complicated. You might ask somebody, hey, why didn't you go study in England like you were planning to do? Well, there were complications. You know, I couldn't get my application in on time. I wasn't guaranteed a student loan. One of my family members kind of got sick. So, yeah, there were complications, and I had to delay my study plans until later.
So solutions in this theme of trying to eat more healthy are centered around providing nutritious food to everyone. If something's nutritious, it has vitamins and minerals and things that will give your body the nutrition it needs to function. So whatever the theme, the target or the goal stays the same, ending world hunger for good. For good is a crazy term that we use. I just have to tell you what it means because if you look at for good, you'd never guess. It means permanently, indefinitely, until the end of time sometimes. So I could say, Tom, I've decided to no longer eat fast food. I'm no longer eating fast food. I'm done for good.
That means you're never going to eat it again. You're going to stop eating it forever.
Yeah.
So you might ask somebody, hey, you're leaving Taiwan.
Yeah.
Are you going to come back? No, I'm leaving for good.
That's
I'm moving back to France or whatever, and I'm not coming back to Taiwan unless I'm coming to visit or something, but I'm not going to live here anymore.
And we use that phrase a lot, guys, for good. So keep your ears peeled. Usually we keep our eyes peeled, right? We're looking closely. Keep your ears tuned for that phrase for good, and you can start using it in your own English.
And we'll continue talking about World Food Day in our program next time, but before we say goodbye today, we'd like to listen to our Chinese teacher.
所以每年世界粮食日的组织人员都会宣布一个主题，比如说在2016年宣布的主题就是 Climate is changing.Food and agriculture must too 在第3段第一句这个地方，所以在当年的活动呢，就关注像气候变迁啊，还有随之而来一些自然灾害就会损坏农作物这样子的主题。在第3段第2句的地方，我们来看一下这里要感觉有一点点混淆，其实第一个字的 events 指的就是当年所办的活动，后面2个字的 that year 指的是那一年，也就是前一句话提到的2016年的那一年。那中间呢往后一点点哦，逗点之后有一个 while， 后面呢就是一个所谓的分词构句。 while 在这里指的是而同时的意思，原本应该句子还有主词动词的 they looked at something， 同时他们也探讨更多有关于永续农业系统方面的建议解决方案。所以在这里我们看到的是 while 而同时连接词保留的一个分词构句，后面的 they looked 简化成为 looking， 所以在逗点前面有一个 focused on something， 在那一年第一先着重什么样的议题，逗点之后而同时呢他们寻求一些解决方案。那么当然另外一个主题是在2019年，行动就是未来，健康饮食，实现零饥饿这样子的一个对话。当时呢数百万人都还是处于饥饿的状态，而且还有更有数百万人面临着比较严重的一些健康的并发症。我们同样在第3段看到第4句这个地方，首先我们看到 not only 放在句首，我们知道否定字放句首的时候，句子就会形成倒装。所谓的倒装呢，就是看起来像疑问句一样，疑问句就是 be 动词助动词放在主词的前面。所以我们看一下这个句子哦， Not only are millions of people going hungry， 我们看到 be 动词 are放在主词 millions of people 的前面，这是因为 not only 的 not 否定字放在句首的关系。逗点之后 but， 其实它跟 not only 就是同样的一组片语，不仅 A 而且 B 这样子的一个连接词片语。那 but 之后就不需要再形成任何倒装了，所以逗点之后的 but 而 millions more 还有更多的数百万人他们面临的健康并发症的问题。所以在2019年的时候呢，提到的这些行动即是未来，健康饮食，实现零饥饿，又是另外一个主题。当然不管是什么样的主题啦，主要的目标都是希望能够永久解决这种全球饥饿的问题。所以接下来在我们的世界粮食日，大家或许也可以想想看，我们可以怎么做才能够消除 hunger 饥饿的这个议题，让世界变得更美好呢？以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们明天见。
That's it, guys. We are not done, though. We're going to continue talking about what it would take to end world hunger, but that will be in our next program. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.